The hardest Pokemon game, a term that has been thrown around thousands of times at this point. Today I have a contender for not only a very hard Pokemon game, but also an incredibly fun one. It's based in the Hoenn region and has every single Pokemon from Gens 1 through 9. There's a couple new Mega Evolutions like Dusknoir, Luxray, and even the Sinnoh starters. You've got built-in level caps, difficulty modes, and even a randomizer, which is what we'll be using today, as we're about to try and beat Pokemon Emerald Imperium with the craziest randomizer options. And if you're a fan of Radical Red, Emerald Imperium is going to be right up your alley, as it takes so much inspiration of its Kanto counterpart. So join me as we try to run through the best Pokemon Emerald ROM hack released in 2025. As usual, you get thrown into the back of a moving truck, but this time the game is going to give you some options to customize your experience. So I turn on my randomizer mode and level cap and head outside. Normally you go out and Professor Birch will be chased by a Zigzagoon. Well, in this game he's safe and sound back at his lab, where you'll be able to choose between 1 through 9 generations of Pokemon for your starter. I personally went with Gen 1, where I had the choice between Minccino, Luxray, and Toedscruel. And because the electric line has a new Mega Evolution, I decided to pick him because I wanted to test out its power. After naming it Chimera, I find out that the game also has following Pokemon, which is always a plus point in any Pokemon game because it just adds so much life and charm to the experience. After this, I immediately make my move up to Route 1 because we have a rival battle with May to get through. She only has a level 5 Litleo, and the cub is always going to lose to the bigger lion, so when Luxray is done with her, we return back to the lab to get some very nice items from Birch. He hands me a Pokedex and some Pokeballs, but also an incredible amount of useful items, like ability capsules, which will allow us to change between our abilities of our Pokemon because they will also be randomized, and some power boosting items like soft sands and magnets, which I immediately put on Luxray to boost his electric type moves. His ability is Mega Launcher, by the way, which is absolutely terrible because Luxray will always be used as a physical attacker. Just before I head back to Route 1, my mom also gives me some useful items like the Dex Snap, Infinite Repel, Pokevial, and Infinite Rare Candies. These are all amazing quality of life improvements, so you can focus more on the team building and taking down your opponents. We thank our mom for all the goodies and head to Route 1. But what are we going to do in terms of encounters? Because this isn't a Nuzlocke, but we will be capturing one Pokemon on each route, the first one we encounter, and if we end up killing it, we do not get an encounter for that specific route. With those rules in mind, let's get our first couple of encounters, and we start off with a banger, a pseudo-legendary, fully evolved Dragonite. The original Dragon type that did take a few balls to be captured, but eventually joined the team. Her name's Jenna, and she has the Good as Gold ability, which means she's not going to be able to be statused, which is incredible, but I don't know if it's better than Multiscale. On Route 2, we got very unlucky because we ended up knocking out a Skeledirge in just one hit, which means the Fire Crocodile is not ours. But our third encounter did decide to join the team in the form of a Kadabra, an amazing special attacker that's going to be awesome against the early game trainers. But Espa's Blaze ability might not be the best for him, considering he doesn't get any fire type moves. If you then head back to the Pokemon Center, there will be a lady there where you can change your gender, nature, and even set your Pokemon to the level cap immediately. A very nice feature that I immediately used to give Luxray and Dragonite the adamant nature, and Kadabra ended up getting the modest one. Then it was time to face my first trainer after May, and he came out packing with a Salamence. Luckily, my Luxray was a little bit higher leveled and could take him down with a couple sparks. The rest of the round was a piece of cake, so I moved on to Petalburg City, where I picked up the old rod from a random fisherman. This allowed me to fish up Spaghetti the Tangela with his illusion ability, and while he might look useless, his bulk is going to come in handy more than once this run. After this, we go say hi to our father, who demands that we give this kid named Wally a lesson in capturing Pokemon. And of course, his first Pokemon ends up being Ralts, which he's going to turn into Gardevoir, and can you tell where I'm going with this? Yeah, Wally might not be as innocent as you think he is. Anyway, moving on from that, I went over to the next round where my Pokemon was a Lolamola named Hearts with the Beads of Ruin ability, which means its special attacks are going to be hitting way stronger than they usually are because it drops the opponent's special defense by 25%. Inside of Petalburg Woods, I grabbed Sandra there's the Blaziken with the Defiant ability, which means we're going to be making this guy a physical attacker. And I encourage every opponent to try and lower this chicken's stats. A little later, I saved a man from a woods pirate who always try to jump out at you from between the trees, so you have to watch out. After the pirate was defeated, we learned that he was after something very valuable, the Devon goods. These goods host the plans to a submarine that they don't want to get their hands on. So if we ever see these pirates again, we better beat them up fast. Speaking of beating things up, there is actually a third rival besides May and Wally, and that's Dawn from the Sinnoh region. She's a friend of May's and would love to see what kind of potential I have because May has told her a lot about me. She's also looking to become Pokemon champion, so a little bit of competition can't hurt. We end up challenging each other to a battle, but Luxray immediately destroys her Buneary and Piplup with Sparks. I then use Dragonite with his Twisters to take out Noibat, and boom, the battle is already over. As a reward, she gives me some useful items like the Wise Glasses to boost my special attack, and a few berries that could come in handy in any battle. I then reach Rustboro City, but head straight out of it to grab more encounters. I started off by fishing up a Girafarig named Woe with Turbo Blaze as its ability, and we also end up taking out a Grovyle, which means no encounter for that round, but in the cave we do get a stupid Apom that never got used. Just outside of Rusturf Tunnel, we met another familiar face from the Sinnoh region. This time it was the first gym leader Rourke, and I had to beat him if I wanted to go and challenge Roxanne. But his Pokemon consist of all old dusted off fossils that were no match for my Tangela's Sleep Powder Absorb combo. We do get a very nice reward in the Muscle Band, and after putting that on one of my physical attackers, I knew it was time to make my move on Roxanne. She had moved on from her weak Geodude Nosepass team and had thrown a Rhyhorn out at the start. The Rhinoceros was easily overpowered after Spaghetti hit it with just 2 absorbs, which forces out her Gligar. I try to take it down with my Alola Mola, but when I click Aqua Jet, she swaps out into a Wooper with Water Absorb. This guy is super weak to Psychic type attacks, so I bring out Espa and use Confusion to take it out in one hit. With the combined powers of Jenna's Twisters and Woe's Confusions, the incoming Gligar falls quickly, and her last Pokemon Nosepass was no match for Spaghetti's Sleep Powders and Absorbs. With the Stone Badge acquired, I headed outside and heard through the grapevine that the pirates finally succeeded in stealing the Devon goods, so we trapped them in a cave, beat them up, steal their seagull, and hand it to an old man. As our reward, we get a free phone, which we can use to open up YouTube and subscribe to me if you haven't done that already. But you know who did subscribe? Our good old friend May, who in exchange for her subscription wanted to face me in yet another Pokemon battle, and who am I to pass one of those up? The battle starts off with a bad matchup for me as Blaziken is facing up against a Golbat, so I immediately swap in Chimera to spark it out of the air. But her Combusken then hits the field, and because Chimera is part Dark type in this ROM hack, I have to take it out of the field. But no worries, because Jenna can deal with it easily with just 2 uses of Bulldoze. I hit another one on the incoming Hatterene, but end up switching out because I get confused. One more bite from Luxray and this thing is down as well, and the final Pokemon is a Cupfu that gets destroyed by a single Confusion from Espa. Now that May's defeated, I head back to Petalburg Woods, where we use Cut to challenge yet another gym leader in the form of Gardenia. Our team is very well built against grass types as Kadabra, Blaziken, and Dragonite carried this fight, which gave us an easy win and the Eviolite, which is going to make unevolved Pokemon bulky as heck, just like my Tangela. Mr. Briny then brings us to Dewford Town with his boat, where we buy up an entire TM shop, cause you never know when they're going to come in handy. We then got 3 encounters, starting off with Frosted Glaceon that ended up having Drizzle as its ability, and anything that changes the weather is always overpowered in these kind of ROM hacks, so I will definitely take it. Jonna the Celio was something that didn't get used all that much, but when we went to Granite Cave, we got our most useless encounter yet, Spinda. The Spotty Panda might be cute, but it's not strong enough to carry me through any battle. At least that's what Steven Stone, the champion, told me at the end of Granite Cave. He also gave me some very useful items like Citrus Berries, the Wide Lens, and his very special Iron Balls. After I forced them into balls of steel, I went straight to Brawly to show them off against his first Pokemon, the Luchador Pikachu, who didn't survive a single Bulldoze from Jenna. I then proceeded to take out Alolan Sandslash with a single Flame Charge from Blaziken, but not before I got hit with 2 Bulldozes. Now that our speed is lowered, I have to swap out when Hariyama hits the field, and while I am able to hit a single Confusion fusion with Girafarig, I knew I wasn't going to survive another hit, so I swapped back into Dragonite, but this caused him to go into Lycanroc to try and counter me. But we have the perfect counter for his counter, Spaghetti with Mega Drain. Once the Stone Puppy was no longer among us, the rest of the fight became incredibly easy with Espa using Psybeam to take down Girder and Hariyama. Now that we have the Knuckle Badge in our arsenal, I used another boat trip with Mr. Briny to reach Slateport Beach, where I fished up a Yanmega with the Levitate ability, which basically means it doesn't have an ability. And a Yanmega without Speed Boost is kind of useless anyway. Back in Slateport, I fished up some ice cream from the sea and saved the local museum from some pirates and their boss Archie. They threatened to keelhaul me, but I wasn't fazed because I know they were all talk and no bite. With my confidence soaring, I headed to the next route where my encounter ended up being a Conkeldurr, a Pokemon that's already really strong, but with its ability Beast Boost, he basically becomes an absolute unit every time he knocks out a Pokemon. So I named him Bob after the famous builder and moved on to Route 120 to face the notorious battle against May. And Frost the Glaceon immediately shows off her power by taking down Crobat with Icy Wind and Ice Shard. Jenna then uses her bulldozers to excavate a Metang, and we burn off Whimsicott's hair with Sanders' Flame Charge. Her Combusken doesn't chicken out, however, as it's able to lift a Psybeam with its Focus Sash and then follows up with a Flame Charge Quick Attack combo to take out Kadabra. But no worries, because we're about to get in the game with Wake Up Slap from Bob as we take out Combusken and the final Pokemon Cupfu 2. This road then leads me to Mauville City, but if you go to the route to the right of it, you can pick up a Good Rod, which is what I do. I also see a random guy drowning in the river there, but we don't have our Surf Reach Gem, so he's going to have to stay there until we can save him. Let's just hope he can swim a bit. I then encountered two useless Pokemon in Vulpix and Caterpie, but the third encounter I got just in front of the daycare was yet another unit that would strengthen our forces by miles. Gambit the Salamence with Magic Bounce as its ability. So if anything throws a status move, they're going to eat it up themselves. With him on the team, the fight against poor Wally was incredibly easy, even though Salamence didn't get used. But Bob does slap her turtle. Then Frost and Sanders combine their powers to take down Gardevoir, and because Blaziken has had enough of it, he also decides to melt down Skarmory and squash Kricketune to get me an easy win to access Watson's gym. And believe it or not, but this old fat guy ended up being one of the strongest opponents we faced in this entire run. I lost to him about a dozen times before I finally figured out a way to take him down, and this is what that looked like. I used Glaceon's Icy Winds to deal with his first Pokemon Dedenne after just hitting two of them. I then swapped in Blaziken to try and deal with Magneton by using Low Kick, but when I clicked Low Kick, he decides to swap into Kilowattrel. And while I did get a critical hit on the Electric Seagull, it didn't do enough damage. So I went out into Chimera and spammed Bite until it finally went back to the beach. I tried Jenna's new move Stomping Tantrum to put Magneton into the ground, but when I tried using it for a second time, he swapped out into his Vikavolt with Levitate. I had no option here but to go into Salamence and finish it off with two Dragon Claws, but his Mega Evolved Luxray then came in, who wasn't afraid of a few dragons. In fact, he even eats them for breakfast from what I've heard. I mean, just look at his incredible design. It was so scary that my Salamence withdrew itself into its Pokeball and sent out Spaghetti instead. I took a couple of hits and put it to sleep. Then I brought in Blaziken, used Low Kick and Flame Charge, and boom, Luxray was no more. And with one last hit on Magneton, the long-fought battle was finally over, giving me the Dynamo Badge and the ability to break rocks. Oh, and Tangela also evolved into Tangrowth, giving him the Sturdy ability, which is even better than what he had before. And we're immediately going to use his ability in a fight against our rival Dawn, who also just got her Dynamo Badge. She starts off strong with a Lopunny that takes about half of my health away from Luxray, and because I'm not doing too much damage myself, I decide to bring in Tangrowth and Giga Drain it out of there. Gambit and his sharp teeth then eat up an entire Chandelier, and once that was done, Frost used her Freeze Dry to turn Noivern from a bat to a block of ice. The grass-kicking lady Serena even has Triple Axle, which is not good for the Dragonite I just sent in, and when she's done kicking Jenna in the face, I bring in Sanders to kill it with Brave Bird. This brings her to her last Pokemon, and definitely her coolest one, a new Mega Empoleon. who's basically turned himself into a shield, but he can't shield himself from Sanders' triple arrows, which are still super effective and do enough damage to bring down the Titan Penguin. After we get some useful TMs and even the Mega Stone for our own Empoleon if we were to get one ourselves, I moved on to the upcoming rounds where I captured Sunburn the Solrock, Leia the Grookey, and Quillen the Hisuian Quillfish. That last one also immediately turns into his final form Overquill, and once I passed through Fall Arbor Town, I ended up finding a Maractus that just never saw the light of day, but the Kangaskhan we ended up capturing in Meteor Falls was way more useful. She also has the Illuminate ability, which means moves that normally aren't as accurate are now boosted by 20%. With this Kangaroo acquired, I heard that a new team named Team Magma is trying to make a volcano erupt, and we don't want half of the region to be covered in ashes, so we go to try and stop them. Their leader is named Maxi, and he doesn't seem to like kids all that much, because if we meddle in his affairs, he'll teach me that my actions have consequences. And I'll take him up on that quote because I straight up throw out my Tangrowth and make his Gigalith explode, doing next to no damage as my big plant monster is still standing. The incoming Chi-Yu is way scarier and even uses 2 flamethrowers to take down my Salamence without effort. But Blaziken and his triple arrows were all we needed to send the goldfish back to his bowl. The incoming Hawlucha puts me in a headlock, so I'm forced to bring out Glaceon and take it out with Freeze Dry, and his spiky Cacturn is stupider than he looks because he keeps going for Sucker Punch while I click Ice Shard, and that just causes his own downfall. He then tries to scare me with his Mega Camerupt, but Bob slaps some sense into him just like the last Pokemon Colossal, as they both don't stand a chance. After the battle is over, Maxi and his goons leave the premises, and the Elite Four Admiral Drake ends up coming over to me. He's been working very hard behind the scenes to try and deal with his Team Aqua and Magma mess, as he's trying to protect his own people and would love some more of my help on this case. We comply and tell him that we'll do everything to take down these 2 teams, and after he winks at me with his good eye, we end up leaving each other because we have a lot more stuff to do. Mainly capturing a Marowak on the Jagged Pass, and taking down Maylene and her fighting types as well, so we can get the Drain Punch TM, which is going to be super good on Conkeldurr, so he can try and sustain himself in hard battles. And he's going to need it against this next opponent, Flannery, who immediately comes out by calling me a puny trainer. And I don't take accusations like that lightly. I try to prove them wrong. So I use Gambit's Dragon Claws to immediately deal with Ninetales, but it was able to set up a drought. Walking Wake then tried to look scary, but really wasn't because Frost could deal with it after just hitting a single Freeze Dry. And because I sent her out, we also have the Rain Up now, which cripples her entire team. Yes, even her shiny Mega Infernape that could probably punch a hole through my wall after I pulled out Bob with a Drain Punch, because once he hit his second move, Flare Blitz, the recoil damage took him and myself out. With her ace down, the rest of her team became sort of a joke as her Microwave got destroyed by Aqua Tail, her Turtle Shell ended up being cracked by a single Psychic, and her spicy 2-headed plant didn't have enough Scoville to melt the ice of Glaceon. Now that we get our own Megastone for Infernape and the Heat Badge, we decide to head outside, where May hands me my own Mega Ring, which means we can finally use our Mega Luxray to its full potential. Normally, you just head back to your dad to try and get your 5th gym badge, but here it's a little different. He says that you're still not strong enough even though you've got 4 gym badges. He wants you to prove himself to him by beating the entire Trick House. In fact, he even sent Wally on the same request. So I prepare myself for another encounter with the green-haired kid. And yes, we do eventually face him once we reach the Trick House. He's not letting us pass until we beat him. And yes, he does throw out his Sneasler, so I go into my Dragonite and try to hit it with an Aerial Ace, but it doesn't quite work out as he swaps out into Gardevoir. I thought I could outspeed, but that ended up not being the case, so I get taken out by a Moonblast and swap in my Mega Evolved Luxray. And his killing count starts here, taking down the Gardevoir with a Sucker Punch. His Sneasler comes back out, so I bring out Salamence and hit it with his Zen Headbutt, bringing it down to the Focus Sash. But it is still faster and hits like a truck, so it claws my Salamence away, forcing me to swap it into Frost, who makes it disappear with Ice Shard. Now that the rain is up, his next Pokemon, Darmanitan, will be at a disadvantage, which allows Bob to take him down with 2 Drain Punches. Corviknight then ends up dying to some Zing Zaps from Luxray, and we also hit one more crunch on the incoming Spider Galvantula before before Bug Buzz gets the KO on me. I then bring out Frost, who takes care of Galvantula like it's nothing, and the final Pokemon Wishiwashi also doesn't stand a chance. Now that Wally is defeated, we can go into the Trick House, which has become kind of like a gauntlet of hard trainer battles. We had to get through 3 different levels. One of them was a cut puzzle, the second one required you to press some buttons, and the third had something to do with gates opening and closing. The trainers you faced in each of these trials also got harder and harder, but in the end we persevered and got all our rewards in the form of TMs and items. After this, Leah evolved into her final form, Rillaboom, with Queenly Majesty, which means nobody is going to be hitting me with priority moves. And with the Trick House being done, I went straight to my father Norman for my 5th gym badge because he was happily taking on my challenge. He starts off with an Hisuian Zoroark that might look like an Obstagoon, but don't be fooled. I use a Crunch Sucker Punch combo with Kangaskhan to easily wipe it off the field so that the actual Obstagoon can come in and take me out. In return, I KO him with Bob's Drain Punch, but then his Mega Slacking comes in. Yeah, I know. Crazy, right? Like this thing didn't have enough base stats yet. No, we should give it a Mega on top of that. Not that it really matters because Bob is just way too bulky and strong, and 2 Drain Punches somehow take care of this beast. His Blood Moon Ursaluna, however, gets the better of me with a Hyper Voice, and not even triple arrows from Blaziken could take it down, so I had to bring in my own Mega Evolution and use Sucker Punch to finally finish it off, but this brought out the next problem, Iron Valiant. The only way we were winning against that is by abusing Sleep Status with Spaghetti and taking it down with Giga Drain. We also put the final Pokemon Cyclizar to sleep, swap into Luxray, and use 2 Crunches and a Sucker Punch to win this battle and the Balance Badge, showing my dad that he should probably leave the gym life before the gym life leaves him. After this, we get taken by Wally's dad into their house, and we hear that he had some trouble in the desert with trainers that were ambushing him, stealing his Surf HM and then leaving him stranded. So if we want to get our hands on that Surf HM, we are going to have to travel to the desert, which means 2 new team members. One of them was Amora and the other a Hitmonlee. We then easily faced every trainer that the desert threw at us and searched through all the sand to eventually find our beloved HM. With it, we could finally try to save that drowning man on one of the previous routes, but as it turns out, it's just Crasher Wake going for a swim. He doesn't require help at all and even wants to battle me here in the water. I gladly take him up on that challenge and take down nearly every single one of his team members with Salamence and Luxray. Our reward is a couple of Mega Stones that are pretty useless to us, but we are going to be able to capture a couple more encounters now that we've reached new land. Unfortunately, they were not that great as I got a Minchino and a Sandslash that didn't even leave my PC. I then saved the entire staff of the local Weather Institute by taking on some more Team Aqua members, and as my reward, I didn't get a cast form this time but a Bronzor. So I immediately evolved it into Bronzong and also did Celio into Walrein because I knew a hard battle against May was coming up. And while the first matchup did go in my favor as Bronzong easily took down her Crobat with extra sensory, her Mega Blaziken was about to shut me up, as it kicked my Bell in the face with its fiery feet and took it down. Even Bob was only able to hit 2 Drain Punches before also falling to its swift feet. The only thing I could do here was go into Spaghetti and hit 2 Giga Drains while tanking a hit with my Sturdy to take it down. Basculegion then finished off my Spaghetti monster, but Chimera's sharp teeth were too much for it. Whimsicott's Toupee then got blown off by a Freeze Dry from Frost, and after this, Chimera cleaned up the fight by taking down Urshifu with Zing Zap and Metagross with Crunch. This gives us 2 great items, the Life Orb and Leftovers, which we're going to put on our Pokemon straight away. As you all know, the next gym leader is going to be Winona, so I started preparing my team by evolving Steggy into Aurora and changing some of my abilities around. This ended up giving Bronzong Wandering Spirit, which could come in handy very much if an opposing Pokemon has an annoying ability. And Walrein got Beads of Ruin, which is just going to ruin the opponent's special defense. We couldn't take Winona on yet because I first had to go and get the Devon Scope from Steven so we could see all of the invisible lizards, and I also ended up grabbing a Capsakid that never left the box like 90% of my Pokemon. With all of that prep time done, it's time to take to the skies where we meet Winona. She might have some good flying types, but birds don't scare me. Except those really big ones that people hold on their arms. Yeah, I wouldn't want to get into a fight with those. Anyway, onto the battle, where our Bronzong puts up a decent fight against Staraptor, even stealing its ability and lowering its own attack with its own Intimidate. Just when I'm about to take it out, however, Staraptor makes a decision to swap into Altaria using U-turn, and I just sacrifice my Steel Bell here because I don't really need him anymore. To deal with Mega Altaria, all I did was swap in Walrein to use the Ice Beams that freezes her clouds, causing her to fall down and break into a million pieces. Luxray is then up against Aggron, who's already taken down my Solrock at this point, so I take revenge by KOing it with Zing Zap. For the incoming Flygon, I hit an Ice Shard with Glaceon first, then go down, go into Chimera again, use the priority Sucker Punch, and boom, it's dead. The remaining 3 Pokemon, Thundurus, Frostmoth, and Staraptor all died to Crunch or Sucker Punch from Chimera, making it a nice sweep for the cleanup crew. Just when Winona hands me this feather badge, however, we learn that an earthquake just happened across the entire Hoenn region and 3 special caves have opened up. This basically just means you can go and capture the Regis if you want. I allowed myself to capture one of these, but unfortunately it randomized into a Guzzlord that ended up struggling itself to death. So no free Ultra Beast that would have juiced up the team for me. However, we do get rewarded by somebody else, the father of Roark, Byron. He and his Steel-type Pokemon gave me a decent challenge, but once he was defeated, he gave me a special Pokemon as a reward. It was supposed to be a Meltan, but it straight up randomized into a Xerneas, one of the most broken legendaries if you decide to use it with Geomancy and Power Herb. Unfortunately for me, I never ended up finding a Power Herb, so if I wanted to use Geomancy, I would have to wait 2 turns, which was kind of being like a sitting duck. But that doesn't mean it's not going to come in handy in a ton of upcoming battles. It even has Super Luck as its ability, so we're going to be critting a ton with this deer. So let's show off its power here in Liligo City, where we battle one of our rivals, Dawn, who just came back from a nice day of shopping with her best friend May. And who better to ruin that day than me? And while yes, we did end up starting off this battle pretty badly, as Glaceon got KO'd by a close combat from Lopunny, but when I swapped in Bob, everything started to become better. I set up 2 bulk ups to boost my attack and defense, and then I was able to take down Lopunny and even the next Pokemon, Mega Empoleon. Chandelure ended up being too much, but we still ate it up with Luxray. Blaziken then took out a cat with triple arrows, Chimera, a bull with Crunch and Sucker Punch, and if that wasn't enough, Bambi also got her first kill by moonblasting a Noivern. Dawn then hands me some useful items including the Assault Vest and tells me that Team Aqua and Magma have ramped up their activities immensely and that Elite 4 member Drake is behind the case. She even tells me to go to Mount Pyre because the orbs for Groudon and Kyogre might have been stolen. So let's see if these 2 balls are still there. I did make a quick pit stop to grab an Alolan Raichu and a stupid Bonsly that needs to stay in his bonsai garden, and then I stand eye to eye with Maxie on the top of Mount Pyre, who's stealing one of the orbs. However, he does tell me one little secret, that Team Aqua is supposed to be stealing a submarine right now back in Slateport. Something like that could be terrible if they use it to chase after Kyogre, so we try to stop them, but unfortunately we are too late yet again because we're stopped by an interview. We do learn that their hideout is near Lilico City, so we barge in there and clean it up and even meet Archie at the end just before he tries to jump in his submarine. But we managed to pull him away just at the last moment and challenge him to a battle. And the winner gets the submarine, so there's a lot of money on the line for me. He throws out an Overqwil that gets freeze-dried and ice-sharded by Frost, but he is able to set up 2 layers of toxic spikes. Poliwrath then knocks me out with a close combat, but we counter back with Bambi using a Moonblast and putting that thing in the ground. Basculegion takes major damage from Hornleech, but is able to take me out with a Wave Crash and Shadow Sneak. After this, Salamence cleans it up and Chimera takes on the next Pokemon, Iron Bundle, with Zing Zap. Unfortunately, we are now badly poisoned, and when Electros came out, we did go down to the poison damage, but we still had Gambit in the back who could deal with this eel, and his last Pokemon, Mega Sharpedo, got punched right in his nice teeth. This means we win the submarine, but unfortunately, you can never trust a pirate on his word, cause he jumps right in and dives away. We try to chase him down, but Route 124 is now filled with sun and trainers. All these trainers are utilizing the sunlight for their teams, so I used Glaceon's drizzle ability to make it rain, which made beating them a lot quicker. So quick that we could easily reach Moss Deep City while getting some encounters along the way like Mantine and Swinub. None of these new team members were needed against the gym leaders Tate and Liza in their double battle, but we did start out with Frost and Bambi against their Tapu Lele and Iron Leaves. I doubled up into the left slot, taking down the Mechanical Deer with Moonblast and Freeze Dry. Mega Alakazam comes in next and he's able to take out Glaceon, but we use Mega Horn to take him down in the same turn. A team member that has never been used in battle, Raichu, then joins, and his Thunderbolt combined with Mega Horn takes on the incoming Farigiraf, which means Tate is all out of Pokemon and we only have Liza to deal with. I use Thunderbolt with Raichu yet again to paralyze it and set up a Geomancy with Xerneas. Once he's done setting up, I take out this Tapu Lele with Mega Horn and Horn Leech, and this means the battle is basically over as the incoming Espathra and Mega Kangaskhan both go down in one hit. Now, normally when you get this gym badge, you need to go and save the Moss Deep Space Center, but here it's already been saved by two of the strongest trainers we know, Steven and Drake. They have cleaned up all of Maxie's goons, but tell me that he still managed to escape with some rocket fuel to their hideout in the Jagged Pass. And because they're busy with other league business, they send me over as their secret agent to go and take that base down. So I waste no time, head over there, capture a stupid Bunnelby as my Pokemon, and face Maxie, who is just awakened Primal Groudon with his red orb. He plans to use this power to create more land in the Hoenn region, which is actually quite a good idea, but he wants to see what this power looks like against me, which is something I'm definitely not a fan of. I don't like lava. It's just too hot for me. Luckily, he doesn't start out the battle with Groudon, he starts with Incineroar and Howlucha, and I lead off with Kite and Bambi. I start off by hitting the Incineroar really hard with a Hydro Pump, forcing it to swap out into Cacturn. I did get flinched by a Fake Out, but the turn after I used Moonblast to take on Howlucha. This brings in his Fiery Goldfish again. And yes, I am able to take out the Cacturn with a Moonblast from Xerneas, but that just means that it's time for him to use the power of Primal Groudon to take on my Legendary. Yes, he ends up winning this matchup, but we're not done yet. I send in my own Mega Luxray and use Sucker Punch to finish off Chi-Yu. His own Mega Camerupt then hits the field, but I keep spamming Wide Guard with my Mantine so I'm protected from Precipal Blades. I hit one Crunch before getting taken out by an Earth Power, and that's when Sandslash comes in. He does hit an Earthquake that normally should have killed Camerupt, but he got burned first by a Fire Punch from Groudon. So his impact wasn't as great as I wanted it to be. But we still have more Pokemon in the back as Sanders takes out the Camerupt with triple arrows while I protect myself with Wide Guard again. Now he just has two Pokemon left, but unfortunately for me, my Wide Guard fails and Blaziken dies. This brings me to my last Pokemon too, Gambit the Salamence. But we get pretty lucky as we keep spamming Wide Guards and the Groudon keeps using Rock Slide so we can finish off both of his Pokemon with Dragon Claws. Now that Maxie's defeated, Groudon sees how weak he really is and he doesn't want to be a Pokemon that's bound to a trainer like that, so he walks away trying to spread more chaos. And if unleashing a Kaiju on the Hoenn region wasn't enough yet, we get another distress call from under the sea because Team Aqua has drilled a hole and found the cavern that Kyogre resides in. And we have to try and defeat them as well. So we battle our way through the cavern, defeating as many pirates as we can, but in the end, the same ends up happening. Archie uses his orb to wake up Kyogre, he captures it and uses it straight against me. He leads with a Golurk and Iron Bundle, which I immediately both take down to red HP, but they do take out my Mantine in return. The incoming turn, Chimera and Bombi take both of them down easily, and he wastes no time by sending out Kyogre and Quaquaval, a very deadly duo. But also the wrong choice of Pokemon, because all we need is a Volt Tackle and Moonblast to take both of them down in the same same turn. The final two Pokemon are Sharpedo and Electros, and all we need is more Zingzaps and Moonblasts, and Archie is already defeated. So no more keel hauling for him. But now that Kyogre is also unleashed upon the lands of Hoenn, or should I say seas, Steven decides to ask for my help to try and track them down. Otherwise, the entire region might be wiped out, and that's not something I want to happen. But first, let's see what Pokemon I captured and never end up using. We got McQueen the Revavroom, Crash the Caracosta, Kevin Durant, and Skiploom. I then did some underwater diving just to pop up at Sutupolis City, where the two giants were fighting. Spectacle that was admired by many people, one of them being Steven, who is also scared because they could destroy this place in a second. So he takes me to the Cave of Origin, where we meet up with Wallace, a special gym leader that is going to become champion after this. But he needs my help, otherwise there will never be another champion in Hoenn. He tells me to go to Sky Pillar to pick up Rayquaza and send him here so that they can calm both of the beasts down. So I went in search of the legendary green Sky Snake, but when I arrived at the top of the tower, something very sinister greeted me. It was Admiral Drake capturing the legendary being for his own benefit. As it turns out, he's been in the shadows behind every single step that Team Aqua and Magma have taken. He wanted them to fight and destroy Hoenn. That was his plan all along. But I was always the one to be messing with his plans, and he does not appreciate that. That's why he's captured Rayquaza for his own, so the region can't be saved unless we beat him in a battle. If we win, he will set Rayquaza free so Hoenn can be saved. If not, well, bye-bye to everything that I've ever known and loved. So with everything on the line, I challenge the legendary captain as he throws out a Salamence and Magearna. So I deal with them by using Freeze Dry to take down Salamence and putting the Magearna to sleep. Gouging Fire with his booster energy then comes in, but my Glaceon just gets taken out. I am able to hit an Ancient Power with Tangrowth doing about half of its HP, but the turn after, my Tangrowth does get taken out. I then use Flare Blitz on Magearna to take it down and Dragon Claw with Salamence to KO the Gouging Fire as well. The next two Pokemon that hit the field are Archaludon and Rayquaza, his Mega Form, and while I am able to hit a single Dragon Claw with Salamence to bring the Rayquaza to a slither of health, both of my Pokemon do get taken out. This leaves me with my last two team members, Xerneas and Mega Luxray, but they're by far my strongest as well, so we should be able to deal with this. First, we take out Rayquaza with Sucker Punch, then we Moonblast Archaludon. The final Pokemon he brings out is a Water-type Paldean Tauros, and with one more Sucker Punch and Moonblast, both of those Pokemon end up going down and we get the win against the evil Drake. This sets Rayquaza free as he goes on his journey to stop Kyogre and Groudon, but we're not able to put our hands on Drake as he flies off into the distance, never to be seen again. With the world saved, we head back to Moss Deep to see that everything is back to normal, and after some grateful words from Steven and Wallace, we get urged to go and battle the final gym leader, Hoenn. And I actually really like what they did with him because he's like this majestic contest guy that loves elegant Pokemon, so they straight up removed his water typing and made him a fairy type master instead. And he has a combination of his two masteries in Tapu Fini as his first Pokemon, who immediately flip turns away into another fairy type, Fluttermane, who is up against my Spaghetti Monster, and I am able to use a knockoff and Giga Drain, but do end up losing this matchup. Chimera does finish it off with Sucker Punch and does incredible damage on the incoming Galarian Rapidash by using a Zingzap and Sucker Punch combo again. It did set up a Swords Dance and killed me in just one hit with Play Rough, however, so we better take this horse down quickly, and what's quicker than a priority move, Ice Shard with Frost. Once Rapidash is back in the stables, he swaps out into his Tinkaton, and just when I'm about to hit it with my Sanders' Flare Blitz, he swaps out again into Tapu Fini. My Snow Puppy uses Freeze Dry to immediately send it to the freezer. We then finally use Flare Blitz to also take down Tinkaton, but his Mega Diancie is very scary. But we have something scarier. Bombi with Geomancy and Hornleech. That combo has slain many enemies, including this Diancie and the final Pokemon, Ursaluna too, so we get the Rain Badge and have the opportunity to go and challenge the Pokemon League. But we can't just walk in there willy-dilly, there's still a couple of challenges for us to overcome. One of them ended up being beating Volkner just in front of Victory Road, which was very easy, but as a reward, we caught ourselves the Time Lord himself, Dialga. A team member like this is just what I need to face the Elite Four and Champion. And you know what's even better? I can even use him against two of my rivals, Mei and Dawn, because they're waiting for one final battle just in front of Victory Road. The first one against Mei ended up being a very easy one as Xerneas and Dialga carried me through it without problems. The one against Dawn was definitely a lot harder. You see, her first Pokemon Pheromosa starts off with a Focus Sash, so my Blaziken isn't able to take it out before we bite the dust ourselves. We do finish it off with Ice Shard from Frost, immediately putting the rain up, which is great for the incoming Blacephalon. It tries to kill me with Mind Blown, but Chimera survives and counters back with a Crunch, eating the Lollipop Disco Ball up like it's some kind of sweet. I then use Sucker Punch and Giga Drain to kill Iron Boulder, Meowscarada gets killed by Freeze Dry and Ice Shard, Noivern gets Dragon Pulsed by Time Wizard, and the final Pokemon, Mega Empoleon, breaks under the pressure of too many Aura Spheres. Now that both of our very best friends are defeated, they're happy that we saved the world and have gone on this journey with me, but they also have a parting gift for me to use in the Pokemon League, namely the Pokemon Kupfu, which actually ended up being randomized into a freaking Miraidon, another powerhouse that we're going to be adding to this already amazing team. I cannot wait to shred through the Elite Four. But you may think, what about Wally and the rest of Victory Road? Well, let's just leave them in the dust because their battles were insignificant as we swatted all of them away like flies and reached the Pokemon League. There was not a lot of team building to do because 3 of my 6 members were already set in stone as legendaries. The other 3 were Glaceon because it's just so important to have that drizzle, Tangrowth who's always going to be able to take a hit, and our trusted starter, Chimera, who's been with us from the very start and is going to Mega Evolve all over these guys. Starting off with Sydney and his Galarian Moltres, who's up against Hulk. And you guessed it, I started smashing and took it down with 2 Electro Drifts. His Mega Evolved Grimmsnarl then finishes me off, but I send in Time Wizard to take away half of the HP of Monkey Dory, Guzzlord, and eventually also Grimmsnarl because Roar of Time is a move that switches out the opponent for another Pokemon. I then use Chimera with his Zing Zap to take down Grimmsnarl, but also crunch away at Victini and take the KO on Absol 2 before dying to recoil damage myself. After this, it becomes really easy as we Moonblast Guzzlord and Freeze Dry Monkey Dory to win the battle against Sydney. Now it's time to face Phoebe. Dragapult is an easy kill with Dialga's Dragon Pulse, but Gengar uses her Mega Evolution as well as a Focus Blast to take care of my Time God. I then put it in the ground with my own Mega Evolution, Sucker Punch. After this, she sends out Annihilape who tanks a Moonblast and a Giga Drain from Tangrowth and Xerneas, taking both of them down. So in the end, I do have to go back into Luxray and hit it with a Sucker Punch. Once the monkey with anger issues is down, the fight becomes easy because we take down Grapeon with a Volt Tackle and also take Calyrex down to its Focus Sash. After this, Luxray does get KO'd, but Hulk can swoop in to take down the other legendary that we're facing, and in the end, the mythical Petulant also falls to 2 Parabolic Charges. This beats Phoebe and paves the way for our next opponent, Galatia. She and her Ice types were in for a treat as I used Sleep Powder on her first Pokemon Ninetales and then swapped into Xerneas, so that I could set up my free Geomancy, and with that I could sweep literally her entire team with Moonblast. I'm talking Darmanitan, Volcanion, Mega Abomasnow, Kyurem Black, Electivire, and finally Ninetales. She bowed down before my strength but wished me luck in my next fight because I was going to need it. Considering Drake is no longer here, he's been replaced by the legendary Sinnoh champion Cynthia, and we're about to have a battle for the ages. Yes, she might have a Spiritomb that immediately swaps out into a Heatran the moment I click Moonblast, but Electro Drift and Parabolic Charge take down the Magma Dweller. She also has a Xerneas genius of her own, which made me very scared because it does have a power herb and sets up a geomancy. I did bring it down to a sliver with the combined power of my electro drift and a flash cannon from Dialga, but this still wasn't enough, as both of my legendaries bite the dust against this thing. My Mega Luxray does finish it off with a sucker punch, but this battle isn't over yet, and most of our strongest Pokemon are gone. Did you hear it when I said most? Because we are not out of this fight yet. I used Sleep Powder on her Mega Garchomp and then swap in Frost to one-shot it with Freeze Dry. Yes, her Zamazenta might have killed me with a body press, but once I brought in my big boy Bambi, it was all over. I Moonblast the dog, then used the same thing on Spiritomb, but end up dying to a Cramorant of all things. Why does she even have this? I don't know, but it's trash. And I'll show you, because all you need is a single Zing Zap from Chimera. A hard-fought win, but we have managed to defeat Cynthia. But our journey isn't over yet. We still need to face the champion of the Hoenn region, and if you were wondering who that was, well, it's not just one person. It's actually a duo of Wallace and Steven, and they know all of our tricks, so we are up against the best of the best. And once our legendary battle starts, we see that they start with the same Pokemon, Empoleon, and both of them are also shiny, which is awesome. But what's even more awesome is both of their separate mega forms, one of them being a defensive one, the other one an attacking one. So my thinking process went like this: let's just keep the defensive one alive and deal with the left side of the field first, because he can't even do that much damage anyway. So that's what I did. I used Aura Sphere, Sleep Powder, and Giga Drain to take the left Empoleon out and put the right one to sleep. Wallace then sent out his Primal Palkia, which looks awesome. I know it's a reference to the Primal Dialga you normally face in Radical Red against Lance, but this guy is definitely not as strong, because we use Roar of Time to get it out of here and swap in Suicune instead. But Tangrowth does eventually fall to Aura Sphere. I then bring in Glaceon and use Freeze Dry and Roar of Time to get Suicune out of here and bring Palkia back in. I would repeat that process if Palkia wasn't able to one-shot my Glaceon and Empoleon didn't roar out my Chimera just before I was able to get a Roar of Time off with Dialga, so Suicune and Empoleon are still on the field. I Mega Evolve Chimera and use its Crunch to take down Suicune, and Bombi then sets up a Geomancy. Empoleon then uses Roar, and this forces in Hulk. Even from this range, a Dragon Pulse still doesn't kill Palkia, and just when Bombi is done setting up his Geomancy, we get roared out. So I send in Luxray and Dialga, using a Sucker Punch to finally finish off Palkia, which means we only have one side to worry about now. Now everything became easy, as I brought in Bombi again and used Geomancy while taking down Empoleon. That's when Steven brings in his own Primal Dialga, who would be a problem if he was on the field together with Primal Palkia, but now we can just double up on him. That's when I just start spamming Roar of Time and Moonblast to take down Dialga and the incoming Metagross as well, winning me the battle and making me champion of not only the Hoenn region, but also the randomizer challenge in Pokemon Emerald Imperium. I am going to say that if I didn't have all of these legendaries, this would have been a lot harder, but even with them, this was still a pretty hard challenge, as the champion battle took me multiple tries to defeat, just like Cynthia. I had a ton of fun playing Pokemon Emerald Imperium. I'm going to say it's probably the second best Emerald ROM hack I've ever played. The first one still belongs to Elite Redux with its awesome Mega Evolutions and new regional forms. But if you're more of a casual player that doesn't really like Fakemon, I think you'd enjoy this game a lot more than Elite Redux. And again, if you enjoy Radical Red, you're going to love this game. It's just like that, but in a different region, and I think that it stayed very true to what it's trying to resemble. I would personally love to see more new Mega Evolutions to see what they can come up with, but for now, I'm going to give Pokemon Emerald Imperium a 9 out of 10 and highly recommend that you try it for yourself. It's a good challenge and you'll feel good if you end up beating it. And if it's too hard for you, you can always turn on the easy challenge mode. Now, with all of that being said, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. I've been Zwiggo, and I'll see you all in the next one.